So honestly, the more you think about this, vape pods might have been the reason for COVID.
Well, maybe. I still think
Or
a big
the
reason for
spreading of
COVID
COVID.
was.
The spreading
I think
of COVID.
I still think a big reason that COVID spread is because we went to Mardi Gras.
Mardi
You ever think
Gras
about
would
that?
seem like a cesspool for COVID.
Super spreader event. It was before COVID was in the headlines, but
Yeah.
it was definitely around because everyone had it like the week after,
Yeah.
and we were
And
all sick when we got back.
Mardi Gras
it was disgusting.
Yeah, no, it was.
If you're from New Orleans, I hope you like it there. I don't ever want to go back to New Orleans. That place was terrible.
It smells like piss everywhere.
Everywhere.
And honestly, there's a reason why. It's because people are just pissing everywhere. Like, that's just the truth. Like, I wish I was making this up, but I saw probably 3 or 4 people just pissing on the side of the street.
100%. Just
Gross.
use needles everywhere. And then all the people who were there for Mardi Gras are hammered, obviously, which, me too, so no problem. But it's like you go from one bar and then you walk outside, you're having a great time, bam, 50 homeless people pissing on the street, use needles on the ground, it smells like ass. And that's New Orleans.
Disgusting. That
You
sums
think
up New
the
Orleans.
city of
pretty
New
well.
Orleans will sue this podcast? I think what we're saying is true, though. It's
Yeah,
not really
because
slander. It's just true.
I mean, slander can also be truth, though, can't it?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think so. I think the difference is you're saying something disparaging that is untrue.
Yeah, we only say true things here.
Yeah. They might be disparaging, but they're true.
They're true.
All right. Let's talk some football.
Let's do it.
Ooh, you didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Welcome to LeatherBrainz, your host here, Slap-a-Diggity Dog, and I am joined today by my good friend Scotty Del Rey for episode 200. What an accomplishment that is. I genuinely, you think of doing podcasts, a lot of them start to fade. And for us to continue and make it here to 200 and well beyond after this episode, I'm so excited to say that we made it to 200. That is, I'm very proud of that. Alan is not here. He could not make it for 200. So it's just Scotty and myself. And today we're going to be talking about football because that's what we do here on this podcast. So the Chiefs, probably the luckiest team in all of the NFL. The Cardinals might be legit, maybe, probably, definitely 100%. We'll see. We'll talk about it. Jerry Jones, he has forgotten that the sun exists. So we'll chat about that and so much more. But before we do that, we have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Erica's Healthy Pet. Guys, we've been saying, we're going to continue to say, you need to go check out ericashealthypet.com for all of your dog's treats and topical solution needs, whether it be cheesy bites, turkey jerky, beef liver chews, sweet potato chips, and so much more. Go check out ericashealthypet.com and use code LB20. You're going to get 20% off of your order if you use code LB20 at Erica's Healthy Pet. Go check it out. Buy your loved animal some treats or topical solutions. I promise you, you will not regret it. Let's jump into football. Before we jump into football, Scotty, why are we wearing sunglasses?
I don't know why you're wearing sunglasses. I have a reason for wearing sunglasses, and it's not just because I look awesome. But
You do look pretty cool.
yeah, I kind of look like if I had a little bit of a lisp, I look like I could be from Reno 911,
I would agree with
or I look like an FBI agent who's taken down Al Qaeda. I don't know. CIA, I guess.
Both are somewhat fitting because you're wearing the America hat. For those that are watching, obviously they can see this, but for those who are not, you're wearing aviators. Your mustache is looking nice and thick and juicy, and then you are wearing an American hat that is tan. So it's tan. It's got the American flag on it. But what
else am I wearing?
Oh, you're wearing that Cardinal sweatshirt to support because we're winners, and that's what winners do. So what's going on? You're blind these days?
I'm blind right now and yesterday because I get something called an optical migraine. This is a hereditary deal that apparently my mom was very kind enough to pass down to me.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I've learned over the years that I can handle the headache if I treat it right. And that includes keeping everything around me as dark as possible and taking a whole bunch of pills. And so that's where I'm at now. But the side effect of an optical migraine, I don't know why it happens. I don't know the science behind it. But for whatever reason, I lose vision. It looks like if you were to stare at the sun, if you were like C.D. Lamb and you have to stare at the sun to try and catch any pass ever. That's what it looks like all the time. I have no peripheral vision. If I focus on something, it disappears completely out of my eyesight, and it's chaotic. It's very unsafe for me to drive, probably unsafe for me to podcast, but I'm here anyway. So I'm wearing these to keep the glare out of my pupils.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that. You do look pretty damn cool. I'm wearing sunglasses because I didn't want you to feel left out, so I threw these bad boys on. So I call them my Teddy Swim sunglasses. But
I think you look like Pitbull.
I'm not bald.
And that's true. I mean, no part of you looks like Pitbull except the sunglasses. They look like Pitbull sunglasses.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I don't really like Pitbull, so I don't know if I'd love to be compared to him, but I could see the sunglasses.
He's rich.
He is rich. I'll take that. All right, let's talk football. Let's start with Joey B. He simply cannot throw enough touchdowns to make up for this atrocious defense. The Ravens win against the Bengals 35-34. Burrow went 34 for 56, 428 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Bengals still lost. Also, we got to give a shout out to Jamar Chase, man, because he had 11 catches for 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Once again, Bengals, they still lost. AFC does suck ass. We know that. The AFC in general is kind of the slum league, and the Bengals at 4-6 are only one game out of a playoff spot. So, which at 4-6 is kind of wild. And, I mentioned that the defense was god-awful. I thought for the first half of this game, I thought that the defense actually looked pretty good for the Bengals. So in the second half, shit hit the fan in all the wrong directions. But I was watching that game, I was like, man, it was kind of comical because we have historically on this show talked about how bad the Bengals defense is. And I was watching this first half of football and I was like, man, the Bengals defense actually looks pretty good. Like they were making a lot of plays. It was a close game. The Bengals were looking great. And then the second half, things went a little sideways.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The Ravens have been just a totally schizophrenic football team. Obviously, they're incredible. I think they're a lot of people's favorite to go to the Super Bowl. They're a high-caliber team. But their team as a whole has been schizophrenic all year, where sometimes they come out and they just look like they've never played football before, and other times they come out and just totally dominate. Unfortunately for the Bengals defense, the game's 4 quarters long. So, they managed to stop the schizophrenic Ravens offense for a little bit, but then they just totally gave up by the end of the game. And Joe Burrow, he's playing MVP football. He looks incredible. Jamar Chase is out there, as much as his personality annoys me because he's just a cocky POS. He can back it up when he's putting up 260 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's hard to blame him for being a cocky POS. But at the end of the day, if defense wins championships, this Bengal team is fucked. I mean, they're just absolutely fucked.
Which I don't understand. It's like, especially at 4-6, the AFC is not great this year. Like I think we can all agree on that. Like the AFC is not nearly as competitive as the NFC is as a whole. Why have the Bengals not made any moves to go and fix their defense and fix these holes that they very glaringly have? That's what I don't understand, because the Bengals are in a window right now. Like that's, T. Higgins, who has missed a good portion of the year due to injury, he was out this last game. He's probably not going to be around next year, right? And we've already seen, Alan and I actually kind of talked about this a little bit last week, where like I think that the Bengals are kind of missing Joe Mixon quite a bit right now because the run game is not nearly as strong. Chase Brown has not been, nearly as high of a caliber player as Joe Mixon, and we'll talk about Joe, I'm sure, when we talk about the Texans. But like their run game isn't there. Their offense is still elite. Their offense is still electric, and their offense is not the reason they're losing these games. But where's the defense? I just don't understand.
Well, I think Bengals fans have just been too preoccupied with complaining about the refs in every single game that they play that they're not calling for moves to be made. Like normally when a team is like this and you see this incredible offense, you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, they're putting up a ton of points. You'd see the fans say, hey, we could be competing. We could be competing if our defense would do anything. But Bengals fans every single week, and granted, you can look back at the tape and see, okay, missed calls here, missed calls there. There were some in this game. At one point, there were screenshots of 3 different face masks taking place from the Ravens on Bengals players, none of which were called. Like, you can see legitimate gripes, but every single week, it's the same freaking thing with Bengals fans. They're all, it's the refs, it's rigged. That's all they do. So, like, Bengals fans, just take a step back, recognize, hey, if your defense was able to play football, you wouldn't be in games that were so close, despite the fact that your quarterback's throwing for near 500 yards, that it can be brought down to a call from the referee. You got to finish the game. You got to get decisive victories. And it's not going to happen until you do something about this defense. And I don't know. I think this coaching staff is on the hot seat with how good this offense is and how poorly they performed. They once again started the season losing a bunch of games in a row, which they absolutely should not have lost. And even the best teams in football, if you're just going to start playing football 5, 6, 7 weeks into the season, it's going to be real hard for you to actually make a legitimate postseason run. So to me, everyone in this organization has to look inward. I saw Bengals fans saying Joe Burrow is going to leave the team. He doesn't want to be there anymore. And I don't know about all that, but I think he's certainly frustrated.
I think that would hold ground for him to be frustrated. I don't see him leaving the Bengals because, I mean, he just signed a contract. He's going to be there for a while. And the Bengals aren't going to let him go. I agree with the coaching thing, though. I think that the entire coaching staff is on the hot seat. And, I think if it wasn't such a close game, I think that a lot of people would be calling for Zach Taylor's head. But let's not forget the Ravens are an elite team. I mean, the Ravens are Super Bowl contenders this year in every sense of the word. Like, they are a dominant team across the board. So for the Bengals to lose by 1 point against the Ravens, I think that there is some grace given there as far as saying, okay, we barely lost. We marginally lost to a very good team. And a loss is still a loss, but all's to say, I think Bengals fans are still holding on hope. Let me ask you this, Scotty, before we move on. Do you think the Bengals will go to the postseason this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a decent shot. If I were to put money on it, I'd probably say yes, because Joe Burrow is just playing so lights out, and their schedule coming up is just easy enough that you could see them putting a little run together, and it would have been really nice to go into that easier portion of the schedule with a win over the Ravens. But I still think that this offense is good enough. I mean, if they're going to put up 35 points or 34 points, I mean, that's going to put you in every single game, if not, allowing you to win pretty handily. So if this offense can keep performing like that, then yeah, they can outshoot most of their opponents.
Okay. Talking about shooting, I almost wanted to do that to myself, waking up Sunday morning early to watch the Giants and the Panthers. Whoever decided let's make an early morning overseas game and make it the Giants Panthers is a scumbag.
This is kind of an interesting conversation, and this is one that fans, we need to sort out what our position is on this so we can start yelling at Roger Goodell to do one thing or another, because he is pushing hard for these international games. They're going to be even more next year, right? This is something that the NFL wants to do this, but we have to decide which is worse. Is it worse to have two no-name teams play overseas and in a game that nobody really wants to watch? Or is it worse to have awesome games that are really matter to the season, but you force these teams to travel 15 hours overseas and change their time schedules and do all this stupid shit? So it's like when you watch an overseas game, you're like, we can't take anything away from this. I don't know how much these players slept. I don't know how much preparation they got. Like, it's almost hard to put stock into those games. So you almost don't want there to be really good games overseas either. So I don't know which one is worse, which one is better. It's kind of a mystery, but we have to decide, because we got to tell Roger Goodell, hey, we need you to do this the right way.
And you're right. And I think that by the end of this podcast, I'll shoot old Goody a text and let him know what we've decided here. I do think that just put the middle of the pack teams out there. Don't put the shit team, because no matter what, I mean, we're so diehard plugged into the NFL that we're gonna wake up and watch those games, right? Yeah. And so at least make it somewhat entertaining. Like, put like the frisky teams over there, like the Cardinals. I think are a really good example. The Cardinals are kind of frisky right now. They're interesting. Are they playoff contenders at this point? They're looking like they're going to go to the playoffs, and obviously that could all change. So I put the Cardinals in a frisky category. Send the Cardinals over there. Put the Cardinals in another frisky team that could be fun. So at the very least, it's entertaining, because you put two shit teams over there, and then I have to wake up early, and then I'm just like disappointed. It does give me a chance to make some breakfast and wake up for the day, because I'm half paying attention because the games are so bad. I don't want the good teams to go over there, because for everything that you just mentioned, I think that it's hard to take things away when it's an overseas game for everything that you just said. So send the frisky teams over there. That way it's still entertaining, because you think about it, good old Roger Goodell, he's sending all these teams over there because he's trying to spread the good word of the NFL and get more fans to enjoy the NFL just as much as we do. But when you send a shit product over there, That's not a good look either. And obviously this game was close. I mean, it was 20-17. Mind you, it's the Panthers and the Giants. So for anybody who is not paying attention to the NFL, which presumably a lot of these people who live overseas are not as big in the NFL, for them, this was probably a good game. But for all of us who know what's going on, you're like, this is terrible. This is gross to watch. It doesn't matter. And both these teams are ass.
Yeah. Well, we did get to see Bryce Young play semi-competent football, and granted, it's against the Giants team, who seems to be maybe the worst team in the NFL. But Bryce Young looked okay, and that's good for him, I guess. I think that almost makes it worse. Because when Bryce Young was originally taken out, we were like, okay, he's done. Like, they're going to ship him off. They're not going to go back to him after that. But then they were forced to, and now it's like, okay, well, you looked okay. Is there still some hope here? I think, assuming that the Panthers end up with like a top 4 pick, they're still taking a quarterback.
You think so?
I think so. I think you got to move on. Like, the experiment's done.
There's just so many holes in that Panthers team and the Giants.
Yeah,
they're both really bad. I do feel pretty confident that Daniel Jones will not be the starter next year. I have pivoted my stance that I think that I had said early on in the season. Daniel Jones is playing some okay football. I'm not going to say good football, but he's playing some okay football. At this point in time, I think the show's over. I think
they're clearing house.
They have.
I've said it from the beginning that I think the most likely scenario is that they fire the GM, they fire the coaching staff, they get rid of Daniel Jones, and they say, okay, now the franchise starts now, and they just start from square one.
But the other thing that you have to think about when all of that happens, which is a very not an unreasonable scenario that you just mentioned, by the way, but I think that the other thing that makes this a little bit more difficult is this is such a what have you done for me lately league that a lot of times there's not enough development and building and grace built into things. And I'm not saying that the Giants need any more time, but like, how much time does a coach get to try and build around in like 2 years? Because that's probably not enough given how much the Giants need to change and pivot and develop. Like, they have holes everywhere. So to hire a new head coach and a new GM and all that stuff, like, looking at the situation, it's pretty bleak. And obviously they're going to have some early picks this year to be able to help rebuild around their team in the way that they need to. But to have an expectation that in year 2 that like you're going to be something, I think is if you're a Giants fan, I would not be that optimistic because you have a lot of holes you need to fill, and you have Malik Neighbors, right? And that's really about it.
Yeah, I don't know. In an ideal world, I think if I was in charge, if I was the owner, I would keep Joe Shane, I would keep Brian Daboll, I would get rid of Daniel Jones. And I would say, listen, we got to eat this contract. We're going to be in a hole for a little bit. We're giving everybody grace. I have faith in Brian Daboll. Joe Shane, some questionable moves, but also some solid moves. And I think he's done enough to warrant a continued shot. And I think that also limits the turnover a little bit. So it keeps you sort of more optimistic about the outlook than when you just say, hey, we got some holes to fill, but we got to get rid of Daniel Jones. And it makes me so sad that I keep saying that over and over again, because if you talked to me 4 months ago, that was not my outlook. But you got to get rid of Daniel Jones. You got to start building up the rest of this team, and you got to give Brian Daboll, who's a good head coach, I think he's very capable. You got to give him an actual shot to coach a real football team. If
the Giants fire Brian Daboll, he would immediately find an offensive coordinator position, and that team would be better off for it. Because if you look at just like the plays that Daboll draws up, they're incredible. Like he schemes incredibly well. He just doesn't have the talent on the field to execute what he's trying to do, which is unfortunate because he knows what he's doing. So, and then the Panthers, I mean, I don't know what the Panthers are doing at all. Like it's probably Bryce. I still think they're going to give Bryce Young a shot.
I don't know. I think it all depends on where I don't know what their pick situation is. I presume they did. I don't know what they traded away recently, but assuming they end up with a top pick somehow. I don't know if they have one or if they need to get one. I think they get a quarterback. But if they don't, I don't know either. I mean, they're just stuck, I guess.
I mean, they're both poverty franchises at this point, so it is what it is. While we're talking about totally fucked teams, let's talk about the Bears. Let's do it, baby. Sorry, MK, I love you, buddy, but Bears lose 3-19 against the Patriots, and why does Matt Eberflus still have a job? I mean, that's really the conversation and it's been a continuous conversation all season long that we have continuously had on this show. Why on God's green earth has Matt Eberflus not been fired yet? Does he have some kind of dirt on Ryan Poles? What? I don't understand it. This man is blowing everything. The locker room lost it. Completely lost it. And that was really telling when DJ Moore just walked off the field last week. The play was still going on, and DJ Moore, he was running what looked like an out route, and then he just ran out. He was like, you know what, the play's over, and Caleb Williams is scrambling for his life, and DJ Moore is standing on the sideline. He's like, fuck this. And so, and we talked about, DJ Moore was asked in an interview, like, has the locker room been lost? And he danced around the question, which inevitably means yes. Matt Eberflus.
I also don't know, like, what do you want him to say?
No, well, and exactly. That's what I said on the show last week. I was like, what is he supposed to say? Because if he says yes, then he's going to paint a target on his head from the organization. But he's not going to say no because that's not the truth. And the truth of the matter is, this team should be a hell of a lot better than losing to the Patriots 3-19. Scotty, I'm going to read you just a couple players on this roster, okay? Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. You have Caleb Williams, who was supposed to be the savior of the Bears franchise. DeAndre Swift's back there. Their defense, the Bears' defense, was really great to start out the season, and then you lose to the Patriots. And it's like, this team should be a heck of a lot better. And they're in a very competitive division. I completely understand that. Why does he still have a job?
Well, the Bears never fire a coach midseason. I don't think they ever have. And I don't know if they're going to start now. I mean, at this point, the coaching is a serious problem. There's no doubt about that. And certainly that we're going to see a new coaching staff next season. Whether or not that happens in the middle of the season, I don't know. But certainly that's the case. But I think even beyond coaching, a lot more of the blame should be put on Ryan Poles. Because I know at the beginning of the season, everyone was praising him, and seemingly rightfully so, because this guy put together such an incredible roster. The defense obviously has been playing really, really great. But this offensive line is pathetic. Like, it is utterly pathetic. And they need to start bolstering that situation. Because I think, even with the coaching aside, if you have a competent offensive line and Caleb Williams, you can see it when he plays, that he is just scared for his life. Like, he is not playing good football to the level that we all know he can play, because he's terrified, and they have to rely on this offensive line in order to keep him alive. And you're not going to be able to run a successful offense that way, no matter who your coordinator is, no matter who your coach is. So there needs to be some blame spread all the way around this organization, but ultimately get some new coaches in there, bolster that offensive line, and we could talk about the Bears being competitive once again. But right now, you said it at the beginning, yeah, they're fucked. They're absolutely fucked.
And there's not. I don't know if there's any more to say. Sorry, Bears fans. I was really optimistic for your season. Your season's over. You should have fired Eberflus before the season started. I mean, that's just the truth. We thought that the beard was going to save him. We thought it was a new era of Eberflus. He had the beard going on, and it turns out that beard ain't shit. Because
another reason to blame Ryan Poles. Like, that's a move that should have been made. Like, you should have. When you're getting a new quarterback, it would be good to start him off with a coach that he can, have for. Because the Bears have done this for several years now, where they get a quarterback and then they fire the coach, and then the new coach comes in, and then they get a new quarterback and then they fire the coach. Like, they need to sync those cycles up, so that way you have a new coach, new quarterback. You can give them both time, allow them to grow together. They didn't do that, and now we're seeing all the problems that are coming with it. And now next year, maybe they get some pieces on that offensive line, but this team is going to have to learn a new offense, and we don't know how that's going to affect them.
Yeah, and I do expect Caleb Williams, if they can find a competent head coach, to take steps forward, because I still do believe the talent is there. I just think it's a shitty offensive call. Like, the offensive coordinator is terrible. I think the offensive line is terrible. But I don't think Caleb Williams is terrible. I think there's still a chance for him. And while we're talking about quarterbacks, let's talk about Brock Purdy, baby, because that man, we can finally, I think, put to rest all of the comments and conversations saying he is a systematic quarterback. Yes, he has a great team. Yes, he has Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. Yes, the 49ers are stacked as far as the roster is concerned, but Brock Purdy is here to stay as an elite good quarterback. He went 25 for 36 for 353 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Bucs. 49ers barely win this game, by the way, 23-20. And Brock, I mean, like I said, he had the stats to back this thing up. The eye test, which is not something that we can necessarily, point out and say, if we want to cherry pick plays, I'm sure we could. But overall, the guy passes the eye test in every way. He's an elite quarterback in my mind. And also, let's just give a little golf clap. Congratulations, Christian McCaffrey. Welcome back. He had over 100 all-purpose yards in his return. He looked solid. It's great to have him back. I'm sure the 49ers are ecstatic to have him back. The only thing that did not look solid, Scotty, was the kicking by Jake Moody. That did not look good at all.
He rounded it off in a solid way by kicking a game winner. But, yeah, I mean, Deebo Samuel was about to fist fight the long snapper because this team this offense would routinely get into field goal range, and then the field goals are all just you can't ever count on them, which is, I don't know. It's got to be very frustrating for someone like Deebo Samuel. You're an offensive player, especially someone physical like him. He's pouring his heart and soul out, and just time and time and time again, they can't rely on something that has been automatic for much of the season. Recently, we've seen kickers struggle, including the best of the best in Justin Tucker. But for most of the season, it's pretty much been automatic. We all kind of just took that for granted, and now we're seeing kickers struggle, including Jake Moody. But, again, you can say what you want about Jake Moody. You can say what you want about Deebo trying to fist fight his own players. They kicked the game-winning field goal. They won the game, and that's all that matters.
What ballsy move by Kyle Shanahan, by the way. I mean, it is what it is. You have to send your kicker out there, right? Because otherwise you just go into overtime. But, like, you have to imagine. I mean, Jake Moody, he missed 3 field goals in this game. So they should have won this a lot more handily than they did. However, I imagine that entire sideline was just holding their breath when they went out there to kick that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, that's got to be terrifying. That just shows he's got trust in him. You know, Jake Moody has been on and off the field this year. He hasn't been he hasn't been able to build up his momentum throughout all these games because he's been injured. But like you just got to make the right decision and stick with what you know your team is capable of doing. And Kyle Shanahan's the best of the best when it comes to coaching. He knows what his guys are capable of. He probably gave Jake Moody a little pep talk, and he said, "You know what? I am an NFL kicker. I'm a professional. I can make 1 field goal," and he did it.
And he did. But I don't want to overshadow the Bucs because they're missing Chris Godwin. They're missing Mike Evans. Rashad White has just kind of looked meh. Who hasn't looked meh is Baker Mayfield. What a story that is Baker Mayfield, because the Bucs still they're competing in every single one of these games, and obviously, I mean the score is telling of this minus the missed field goals. The Bucs look pretty dang competent with a bunch of like wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s and Baker Mayfield back there. So I have to ask you, Scotty. Are the Bucs better than the Falcons?
All totally healthy? Everyone's on the field? Or
who
right
wins
now?
the division?
Falcons win the division.
Falcons win the division this year. Who's the better team?
The Bucs. I picked the Falcons to win the division early on because I was very confident in this Falcons team. This week was a tough week for them. But I do think the Falcons, when they put it all together, are the best team in the NFC South. However, the Bucs are right there, and Baker Mayfield is making that case. I mean, he is showing that, you know, you put him in the right situation, you give him the confidence that the fans there freaking love him, and who can blame him because the story is amazing. But Baker Mayfield will be competitive in any game with this team, and that's just the bottom line. So I would still give the edge to the Falcons just based on the talent on the field. Certainly right now, just given the injuries, the Bucs are in a tough spot with that. But they are competing in every one of these games. They are firmly in that frisky category. They are a team that you cannot overlook. The most elite teams in the NFL, you cannot overlook the Bucs any given week.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is Baker Mayfield a top 10 quarterback?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Baker
Mayfield is playing like a borderline MVP candidate right now.
Okay.
So I with his play this year, I mean, you could put him in the top 5. And you know, if you were going to actually look at careers and all that, you can make an argument that he shouldn't be there. But with this year, Baker Mayfield is playing elite football.
What about years to come? And that's mainly, and I bring this up selfishly because in our dynasty league that we are both in, I was looking at actively trying to pursue Baker Mayfield, and the owner of Baker Mayfield was not interested in selling him for anything less than an absolute haul, which I understand right now. However, he's on a 3-year deal with the Bucs. That ends in 2026. Baker Mayfield's going to be 31 years old, so obviously his play in the next 2 years are going to dictate a lot. But what would you do? Like, I mean, At 32, he's an unrestricted free agent in 2027. That's a pretty interesting situation for the Bucs to find themselves in because the Buccaneers are not getting any younger. I mean, obviously, like we just mentioned, Chris Godwin's out, Mike Evans is out. Those are two aging wide receivers, and they're still getting it done without him. So, all's to say, like, what's the future? And obviously, this is still 2 years out in advance, so we don't need to worry about this right this moment. But when I was having this conversation with the owner of Baker Mayfield, I was kind of telling him, like, hey, I want to buy this guy, and I'll be willing to pay a price, but this gentleman had said he wouldn't even trade Patrick Mahomes for Baker Mayfield straight up right now. He would rather have Baker Mayfield, which I thought was kind of crazy. And he said, call me crazy. And I did call him crazy. But do you think that warrants any ground at all?
No. No, I like Baker. And when it comes to fantasy, we're not a fantasy podcast anymore. But when it comes to fantasy, us NFL fans have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, when we're looking at these things, we're looking at them through a different lens. And Baker Mayfield is he's a top 20 dynasty quarterback, but he's not a top 8 dynasty quarterback. Like Patrick Mahomes is still a top 10 dynasty quarterback. So to me, that's a no-brainer. You want Patrick Mahomes. He's shown what he's capable of. But Baker Mayfield is someone that you'd want to have. Ultimately, he's a high-end QB2 in most 2-quarterback leagues. And he's serviceable as a QB1 as well. And depending on who they're playing, depending on if their players are in the hospital.
I think this year right now he's QB3 on the year.
Right. But I'm talking about long-term from a dynasty
perspective.
perspective. So, yeah, like you want him right now, but when you're looking at his outlook, it's still kind of up in the air a little bit. I pulled up fantasy football dynasty rankings here just to help us out on fantasypros.com. Shout out to them because they're awesome. I use them all the time. Baker Mayfield is ranked as QB 18 in dynasty rankings behind Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert. And that's where they've got him ranked in Fantasy Pros. And I think you can make an argument that he should be higher than that, but that's the conversation we're having. Not Patrick Mahomes, not CJ Stroud, not Joe Burrow.
Okay. I agree with that, and I tried to make that case when I was working on purchasing him, and inevitably once he said that, I said, okay, I think we're very far off on the valuation, and I'm going to pursue other avenues. But I just found that to be interesting, and while we're talking about the Bucs, I wanted to bring that up. We mentioned Patrick Mahomes just a moment ago. Let's talk about the Chiefs. Let's do it, Scotty. I'm going to take this microphone, and I'm just going to throw it straight over to you. Go ahead as the resident Chiefs fan. I know Alan is not here. You guys dominated in every facet of this game. It was not even close whatsoever. It was Chiefs Kingdom by a million.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time we've been able to accurately say all that about the Chiefs. They have been in one-score game, like for my entire life, it seems like. And I know in the Patrick Mahomes era, there was a time when Tyreek Hill was putting up 40 fantasy points a game and this team was blowing teams out. Those times are long gone because this team just struggles every single week, but they pull it out. We had Matthew Cahan. He's over at the Fantasy Brains podcast. Check him out on Thursdays. But he was angry about the Bears because they suck, and that's disappointing. And he lashed out, and he said, the Chiefs are the luckiest team in the NFL. The luckiest team. Let me ask you something. If you continually, year after year after year, find a way to win in close nail-biter games, you're not lucky. You're good. And the Chiefs are a good team. They're a very, very well-coached team with a solid, I would argue, elite defensive unit and an offense that's just good enough to get the job done. So, yes, you could say that they only won this game because they blocked a field goal, and what are the odds of that? Not very high. But when you have an elite team, an elite coaching staff that preaches the right messaging, gets the guys fired up in the right moments, they'll make key plays in key situations. That's what the Chiefs do. No, they are not lucky. They are elite. With that said, they should not have won this game.
Okay.
I mean, it was...
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were coming back to earth just a little bit here.
Yeah, no. I'm talking about the Chiefs overall. They're an elite team. In this game, holy shit, they should not have won this game because they played terribly. The offensive line was garbage. Patrick Mahomes, as a result, played like garbage. He missed two wide open touchdown passes in this game that were overthrown. Like just pathetic throws where I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't know if I'm sitting here watching Daniel Jones or I'm watching Patrick Mahomes. And that's not something you want to say as a Chiefs fan ever. So yes, they should not have won this game. That's 100% true. But again, key plays, key situations, the Chiefs find a way to do it time and time again. That's because the coaching staff is the best in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that, or they're definitely in the conversation for me. But
Well, here's just one last thing.
Okay.
One thing that I learned as a young tyke playing football, which now that I say that out loud, tyke kind of sounds like it should be a slur, but
does.
it's not. It's just
it's
it's
just,
not.
you're just a youth. You're a youth.
It's just a youth. So don't cancel me over that because I think it's an appropriate word. But when games come down to the wire, the coaches decide who wins. Coaching decides the real close games.
Unless you're Josh Allen.
When games are blowouts, the players are deciding who wins that game. So when you see teams blowing people out, you can look at them and say that's an elite roster. When you see teams like the Chiefs who are just winning nail biter after nail biter after nail biter, you have to give credit to the coaching staff because generally speaking, the coaching staff makes the difference in those games.
I think that's a fair statement. And once again, I'll put an asterisk there because I think Josh Allen sometimes just carries his teams to victories despite what some would say is poor coaching. Yeah, it's interesting. And let's flip the script on this just a moment. Look at the Broncos for the rest of the season because Bo Nix is not playing bad football. And you know my feelings towards the Broncos. I think Sean Payton's a scumbag piece of shit. But all's to say, they were a field goal away from beating the Chiefs. I have my thoughts on the Broncos rest of the season, and I'll share mine, but I'm interested in yours, Scotty.
Here's where I put the Broncos. They are climbing out of this team is fucking garbage, and they're moving into frisky territory. I think they're still kind of right in between those two. It depends on the week. It depends on what they can put together. Overall, you look at this roster, yes, Bo Nix is playing well. Roster's still not that great. Their defense is playing well. But on the offensive side of the ball, roster's still not great. They got to make some moves to be able to get over that hump. But if you're a Broncos fan right now, after all the mess with Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson, you are feeling very happy about the trajectory of the team at this point in time. And I think you're going to have a hard time finding Broncos fans who say Sean Payton is a scumbag piece of shit because I think they're happy with where they're moving right now and they're happy with the rookie quarterback play and they're thinking we get a few more pieces on this offense and we maintain this good defense and we're going to be a competitive unit going forward.
I agree with all that. And, that's my thoughts towards Sean Payton, and that will always be my thoughts towards Sean Payton, no matter if the Broncos win the Super Bowl next year. I still think he's a scumbag. I will always think that about him. However, I do agree with you in the statement that you had just said. I do find it to be a little interesting. Because I think that they are. I think frisky is I think they're approaching frisky territory. If the Cardinals and the Broncos went overseas, that would be an interesting game. It would be a frisky game that I would want to see.
That'd be a game you'd wake up for.
It would be. I mean, I'm going to wake up for any of these games, but at the very least, I'll be entertained, or I would hope to be entertained, because these two teams they're getting. The Cardinals are a little more frisky, in my opinion, but the Broncos, like we mentioned, I think they're approaching frisky territory, and I think that would be a fun game because at the end of the day, I don't think that game necessarily matters for either team. I mean, it does, but like in the great world of the NFL, I think it would just be an interesting game to watch. So send them overseas and let's watch that because that would be more entertaining than what we had to do last week. And we mentioned Josh Allen, how Josh Allen, I had said it earlier, he's the asterisk mark to turning the game around. Let's talk about Buffalo because they took care of business in a rather sloppy game. There was, despite these injuries that were happening, the Bills beat the Colts 30-20. And the Bills defense, their offense is, as I mentioned, plagued with some injuries. There's some lingering pains going on over there. And the Bills defense looked pretty good. And the Colts, they lost this game. The Bills forced 4 turnovers. It's a championship caliber team, even when Josh Allen took the day off today. Or Sunday.
However many days ago it was. Yeah, Josh Allen did not play his best game. 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. But this defense, I mean, just made a statement. And granted, they're playing the Colts. The Colts have struggled. Joe Flacco has kind of been up and down. He's had some games where we're like, yeah, Joe Flacco's the savior of football. And some other games like this one where we're like, well, are they looking for Anthony Richardson? I don't know. If I'm a Colts fan, I'm sticking with Joe Flacco. The Colts organization has pretty much said as much that they're sticking with Joe Flacco. But I am interested in your thoughts on if you're a Colts fan. You put yourself in their shoes. You got Anthony Richardson. He does some crazy things. He decides just to tap himself out on some plays. I don't know what the deal is. But he's also a freak of nature and can make awesome plays and can huck the ball 75 yards on one step. Are you, at this point in the season, none of us are expecting much from the Colts going forward. I mean, they're kind of a borderline frisky team depending on the week, depending on their opponent. Not really expecting a ton. Anthony Richardson, should he be playing? Should he not? I tend to think Joe Flacco is the answer. They want to win games. As they want to build as much momentum. They don't want to lose the locker room. Anthony Richardson clearly has a lot of developing left to do. Keep Joe Flacco in. But I could understand Colts fans saying, let's just give this guy reps. Like, his big problem is he's never had reps his whole career. Let's give him reps. We know we're not competing for a Super Bowl anytime soon, so let's give our rookie quarterback some reps and let him actually get practice on the field and learn this game, not on the sidelines.
I have two trains of thought when it comes to Anthony Richardson. I have a vested interest because I own Anthony in Dynasty, and so I have a personal vested interest in this entire situation. And the conclusion I've come to is this. I understand what you're saying about Colts fans maybe just wanting to throw Richardson out there. And I think by the end of the year, Richardson will be out there starting again. What I think the problem is right now the Colts still are of the belief that they can compete and maybe get frisky enough to get into the playoffs. And I think what would happen is if Steichen were to pull Flacco and throw Richardson back in, he's essentially saying the season's over, right? Because I don't think Richardson is going to win them some games that maybe Flacco could win them, right? And so you make that change, you're basically throwing the flag, or you're throwing in the towel, and you're saying, okay, season's over, let's get this guy developed. We as NFL fans who are not Colts fans would say the same thing. Like, okay, we know that you're not going to go to the Super Bowl. We know that you're not going to be, make a deep playoff run here. Why not do it now? Why not just throw Richardson back out there and let him develop? But honestly, I don't know if I would want that. Like, as a Richardson owner, because I do think he needs a lot of development, and I don't think it's in the physical side of things. I think it's a lot more mental. I was watching Colts games this year when Richardson was playing, and he can't read a defense. He can throw the ball really far. He can't make the intermediate throws. And I think that's really where he struggles right now, is being able to accurately read a defense and adjust things on the fly, pre-snap, make the right calls that he needs to make to move the ball down the field. And so I think by putting him on the sideline, having Flacco walk him through things in the film room and say, this is why I did this. This is what I saw here as far as what I adjusted here. This is the first read I made because this guy's in a shell coverage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that will probably do numbers for him without putting the pressure on him to do it in 40 seconds before the ball is snapped and then have an entire stadium scream and yell at him saying, you're a bad player. Because the Colts have also come out and said, like, there was rumor that there was, people were inquiring about Richardson being traded, and the Colts said absolutely not, which tells me that Richardson, is still going to be the guy for them moving forward. Let's just let him develop, and let's see if we can teach him the mentals of football, because the physical attributes are there. I mean, he is a freak of nature as far as the athlete's concerned. It's the brain that they need to work on and try and get him figured out in that way, so that way he can be a successful quarterback.
Yeah, to me, it's just there are two sides to this argument that are both pretty compelling, because generally speaking, when we talk about quarterbacks coming into the NFL and riding the bench for a while and learning, you're talking about quarterbacks who still have a lot of football experience. Anthony Richardson does not have a lot of football experience, even going back to college, even going back to high school. Like, this guy has been injured so much, and he just hasn't really put any length of time on the field, that part of me is like, that's what he needs. He needs to play the game. Like, he hasn't played the game nearly as much as anybody else, so let him play the game. The other part of me is like, the upside for Anthony Richardson is his physical attributes. I mean, he's just a physical specimen. He can do things that nobody else can do. So you don't want to jeopardize that. Like, I understand what you're saying about the mental stuff, but as a rushing quarterback, the longer he's out on the field, the more likely it is he's going to be injured, the more tread on the tires. So keeping him off the field and allowing him to build up the mental, fortitude necessary to be a successful quarterback might be the move. But to me, you're rolling dice either way. I mean, it is like, I could see Anthony Richardson, fizzling out and not ever being a starting quarterback. I could also see him coming back and being like, wow, like, this guy is, Lamar Jackson, except twice his size, and is incredible. It could really go either way. So they're playing with fire over there in Indianapolis, and I don't know how it's going to end up.
I think by the end of the year we will see him out there, because I think that at some point the team's just going to have to determine, okay, we're not going to get it done. Like, we're not, whether they make a wild card play or what have you. they're not going to be able to succeed down the stretch, and I think they will do a quarterback swap to give him those valuable reps. I think they're just trying to bid their time with Flacco out there to see if they can, build up the mentals before they throw him back out there. So time will tell. Time will tell. Time will tell for everything, my friend, to include Aaron Rodgers. Deep. Yeah, we're getting deep in here. The Cardinals, baby. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! I'm freaking back, baby. It has been quite the roller coaster as a Cardinals fan this year, but we absolutely stomped the Jets 31-6. Scotty, I will be the first to admit I did not get to watch this game, which broke my heart. I was getting play-by-play reviews. It was wonderful to see. I didn't get to watch it all, but I did go back and try and watch all the highlights and the clips and all that kind of stuff. There was a play in particular where Kyler Murray, I thought, died on the field. He got absolutely rocked by a D lineman, and I was like, oh, he's not going to get back up. Obviously, he did. They won the game. Things were looking good. But let's go back and talk about time, Scotty, because time is the only thing that is consistent, and time is not real. It is fabricated by human beings. However, time is real when it comes to aging of the body and the mind and the soul. And Aaron Rodgers' soul might have seen its day. Does he call it quits after this year? I mean, that's really the question that I would love to talk about the Cardinals, but I didn't get to watch the game, so I don't want to delve in it too much, aside from the fact that I'm back in. We're winning the division. We're going to the Super Bowl. Life is great. But really, I think the talking point here is the Jets. They lost 6-31. Aaron Rodgers was injured for part of this game. He came out, and then he came back in. The Jets have a lot of problems, and Davante Adams was not the solution. Firing Robert Saleh was not the solution. I think the problem is Aaron Rodgers. I really do believe that. I think Aaron Rodgers is the problem for the Jets. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Aaron Rodgers, if I'm looking at it from a technical standpoint, Aaron Rodgers has been beat up a little bit this year. The offensive line has not performed as well as you'd like. You'd like to see playmakers make a little bit more plays. I mean, this is another team that just on paper, this roster is just phenomenal on offense, defense, and special teams. But obviously we haven't seen that come to fruition. The question about whether or not Aaron Rodgers retires is interesting because it's a battle between, how much cartilage remains in his knees versus the size of his ego. And if there's one thing you can say about Aaron Rodgers, I don't know about the cartilage situation, but I do know this man has a freaking ego. And I actually like that in a quarterback. I like a quarterback who's like, yeah, I'm the fucking best, and I'm going to come out here and prove to you that I'm the best. Aaron Rodgers has that, and I don't know if the lack of cartilage in his knees is going to be enough to quell the ego going on. And he might sit there and say, well, I didn't get along with Robert Saleh. They got rid of him. I have all the guys that I want by my side now. We just need a competent coaching staff. We need to make some moves on the offensive line, and bam, the Jets are back to being competitive. I think that might be what's going through Aaron Rodgers' head, and I think he might want to run it back again.
Do you think if they didn't trade for Davante Adams, he would retire after this year without a doubt?
No, I don't necessarily think that. I think everything I just said holds water with or without Davante Adams. I think Davante strengthens the argument, but I think ultimately it's going to be up to Aaron Rodgers what he wants to do, and who knows, what his next ayahuasca trip, what the gods are going to tell him or whatever. But I think there's a decent chance that he's like, we got to get a new coach in, we got to get some moves on the offensive line, and we are going to be just fine. The move for Davante Adams didn't make sense to me when they did it. I mean, obviously, there were a lot of stories about Davante going to the Jets, and I wrote them off. I was like, that's not what they need. They don't need Davante Adams. They need ancillary pieces. They need to be able to protect Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's what they need. They don't need Davante Adams is like, it's not going to solve anything outside of making a better highlight reel at the end of the season, however short that may be. But like that was not the answer to do that. I think Aaron Rodgers was pushing for it because he likes Davante. He knows what they're capable of, but all of us recognize the holes that need to be filled are not at the wide receiver position. They're everywhere else. And once they do that, there's a chance they could be competitive. But I think Aaron Rodgers still believes in the team. And because of that, I do think there's a good chance that he decides to come back and run it back.
Okay, I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're talking about players coming back. Let's talk about Trey Lance because he made an appearance on the gridiron against the Eagles. Look, man, the Cowboys are in really bad shape, which I love, by the way. Nothing makes me more proud than watching the Cowboys just fumble the bag, and they absolutely did that this week against the Eagles, losing 6-34. Cooper Rush, we knew it. He's ass. And then they brought in Trey Lance, who honestly is probably also ass. He was in there for 6 passes, and he threw a pick. And the Cowboys are the season's over. Dak's done. Dak's hurt. Dak's out for the season. And honestly, I don't know if their season ever started because the Cowboys came out of the gate looking bad and have continued that trend throughout the entirety of the season, and I believe that will continue. If anything, we've been Trey Lance stans since Trey Lance era had began with the 49ers, so it's nice to see him get some reps with the Cowboys. I don't think Trey Lance is the answer. I don't think Trey Lance is going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. This drives me crazy that Cooper Rush was there at all.
Agreed.
I think Trey Lance, the biggest thing with him in the NFL, and honestly even in college, he's another quarterback that just didn't really get an opportunity to play a lot. And you picked him up as a backup quarterback because you thought maybe he's got some potential. I don't think the front office of the Cowboys, when they traded for Trey Lance, was like, yeah, this guy's going to replace Dak Prescott. I don't think they thought that. I think they recognized he's got some upside because we haven't seen him play enough to really know.
Sure.
But I don't think they drafted him to be a replacement for Dak Prescott. I think they drafted him to be a backup quarterback. Let him be a backup quarterback. Like, your season is fucked. Like, you guys have underperformed in every possible way. Let's see what Trey Lance can do. And it's very annoying to me that they decided to roll out Cooper Rush. Like, it must be something that they're seeing in practice where they're like, this guy just sucks about Trey Lance, because otherwise, what's the reason for not giving him all of the reps as the backup quarterback? But we saw Cooper Rush just absolutely struggle in this game. And to me, it's like there are fewer and fewer reasons to not just say, okay, Trey, you're the QB2. Let's see what you got. Win or lose, we're going to let you finish this season, because odds are, the Cowboys aren't doing anything anyway. So let's let you finish the season. Let's see if you can put a highlight reel together that makes us confident enough in you to keep you around as a backup, or maybe give you another chance at an NFL career with another team. Let's find out, and let's do it. Because nobody's saying that about Cooper Rush. Like, Cooper Rush is a backup quarterback, and it is what it is.
But Cooper, Dak went out, last year? And Cooper Rush did not look terrible. Cooper Rush actually looked somewhat usable at times. So I give some grace in that argument solely because we saw what Cooper Rush was doing last year when Dak was gone, and he looked usable, right? He didn't look like he was a world breaker, but he looked okay, right? And so you roll him out, and then that's the product you get. I think, and I agree with you, I think they purchased Trey Lance from the 49ers for a 5th-round pick, I think it was a 5th-round pick, for him to be a backup quarterback. But I think that, the compelling argument as to why it made it so favorable for them to do that trade was, let's see what we can get, if there's anything to get out of this guy. And so I think that's why we saw the swap rather quickly, and we said, okay, Cooper, we know what we have in you. We've seen it in years past, and this is not a good product. So I think going forward, we are going to see Trey Lance for the rest of the season. I do believe that.
I hope so. I mean, at this point in time, there's nothing for Dallas to lose. Like, Let's actually give this guy sustained reps, because you can say what you want about Trey Lance. He's looked bad, but he was competing with Brock Purdy with the 49ers, and we know now what Brock Purdy is. And so Trey Lance, just with injuries and everything, has not really been given a shot, and you can't gauge a player on whether, what his ceiling is based on a few plays here, a few plays there. Like, you have to give him some continuity with the offense to figure it out. They need to do that. But at this point, what would surprise you more? Jerry Jones making the right move or the wrong move? Like, he just seems to fuck everything all up all the time in his old age, including the stadium, which I don't know if this was like the big talking point out of this game because it was a blowout, but there was a play where CeeDee Lamb running through the back of the end zone. He wasn't wide open, but he was open enough that CeeDee Lamb's going to make that catch 99 times out of 100. And you see the sunlight reflect off his visor. You can't even see what facial expression he's making because all you see is the sun. And Jerry Jones was asked about this after the game because obviously he didn't see the ball at all, didn't catch it. And Jerry Jones just snapped at the reporter. Jerry Jones clearly has people in his inner circle that are like, why do we play in a stadium where the sun is blinding our players? Like, why do we do that? And Jerry Jones snapped back and he said, where did I put that quote? He said, well, let's tear the damn stadium down and build another one. Are you kidding me? Like, that's what he responded to. Well, how about this, Jerry? There was a reporter in the locker room who asked CeeDee Lamb about this. CeeDee Lamb, are you in favor of putting some curtains up? And CeeDee Lamb said, yes, I am in favor of that. Jerry Jones, you don't need to build a $7 billion stadium or whatever they cost. Just put some curtains up, bro. Like, you could just put some curtains up when you're – I even wonder – I don't know if there's a rule against this, but they have a unique situation, kind of like Miami does, where they use their stadium to their advantage and they cook the other team alive on the sidelines while they're sitting in shade. If they could put some curtains up on some, like, retractable wire, and it's like just when they're facing the sun, they close them. And then when the other team's facing the sun, they open them up. But
I think you have to leave it open or closed all game for fairness. But they definitely could. You could rig some curtains up in a way in which you also just cook the other team. I don't know why you wouldn't. Let's use everything we can to include our surroundings to our advantage. So I agree with that. And it is kind of like, first and foremost, Jerry needs to be done. We all know that. The old skin bag himself is, he's probably getting close to being done with life. But he needs to be done with the GM role because it's not working. And Jerry was also asked, which I find to be kind of interesting. He was asked, are you looking to make a coaching change? And he said, no, not at this time. Why? Why not? Like, Mike McCarthy has been on the hot seat for the last year and a half, 2 years, if not maybe even longer. And you're continuing in true Jerry fashion. You are just letting things go. You're letting it ride. And you're like, no, we're good. So he waits way too long to do everything, just like he did in his all-in moves this year. So when is Mike McCarthy going to be done by the end of the season? What do you think?
He should be. I hesitate to predict what's going on in the mind of Jerry Jones. So I don't know what the hell he's going to do. But yes, this is the perfect opportunity for the Cowboys to part ways with Mike McCarthy, because the argument before was always that they were competitive. They were a playoff team. And yes, they sucked in the playoffs, but they were a competitive team that was dominating teams in the regular season, and then they would just fizzle out in the playoffs. And it's hard to get on board with firing a coach. Like, a coach can buy himself a lot of time by being competitive over and over and over again. But this year, even before Dak's injury, they weren't competitive. Like, this team sucks. So that's like the prime opportunity to say, okay, like, we're starting over. We just signed Dak to this ridiculous contract, so we don't have to worry about, getting into a Chicago Bears cycle of coaches and quarterbacks. We've got continuity there. Let's get a new head coach in. Let's get some fresh eyes here. We know we have some talent, and let's see what we can make happen. I don't know if Jerry's going to do that.
I hesitate to think that he will, but, once again, time will tell. Let's go over to Dan Campbell biting some kneecaps in a really great comeback victory against the Texans. The Lions, 19-point comeback victory in the second half against the Texans. The Lions win this game 26-23. The Texans, I watched this game, man, and this was a fun game. Aside from Jared Goff throwing, I think it was five interceptions. Five interceptions. Horrible. Some of them were like not necessarily his fault, but kind of his fault.
The first two were like bouncing off receivers, but it was like not perfect. I do just want to juxtapose this, that the Lions threw 5 interceptions and won the game.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow threw for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns and lost the game. That's the difference in team. That's the difference in coaching. That's the difference in being prepared. The Lions.
Did you just compliment Dan Campbell?
Well, I have a secret to tell you.
Okay, I love secrets.
And I'm just telling you and the brainiacs who are listening, nobody else.
Okay.
I'm all in on the Lions.
Yeah,
I'm all in on Dan Campbell. Because Dan Campbell, all the things that I complained about him last year, he's not doing anymore. He's not doing the stupid shit. He's gotten better. And I remember the NFC Championship last year when Dan Campbell cost them the game, and I came on here and I said this is the most predictable outcome because this is what Dan Campbell's been doing all year. But the silver lining, and I outlined it then, is this is probably the situation that helps Dan Campbell mature. And it did. He is so much better when it comes to decision-making this year, and there's no other complaints that you can have about him. I still think he says some stupid shit, but the players seem to like it, so who cares what I think? The players love it. Everybody's bought in, and I'm bought in on the Lions. This is the best team in the NFL. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is a team that can throw 5 interceptions, that can absolutely suck on the offensive side of the ball for the entire first half and still win the game. Against a Texans team, yes, that has some injuries, yes, that's not as high-powered as we thought, but this is a good Texans team, and this isn't Joe Schmo. Like, they came out and handled business. The Lions are the best team in the NFL. Like, and if there's one thing bad I could say about the Lions, or not bad about them, but something negative about the outlook is the Texans in the first half demonstrated how to slow down this offense, which is double team Amon-Ra St. Brown every play, no matter what. And if they did that in the first half, and it really took its toll. So there are teams like the Chiefs who, there's a decent chance that they end up playing each other in the biggest game of the year. And the Chiefs, Spagnuolo is going to say, well, I know how to stop this defense. And the Texans kind of demonstrated that, but still the Lions found a way to overcome. They're the best team in football. There's just no doubt about it.
Golly, Scotty, my heart is so full. You finally come full circle.
Let me just say, I didn't come to the Lions came to me. I had my complaints about the Lions. I think those complaints were legitimate. They fixed them. They fixed their problems. Okay. And now I have no complaints.
Okay, I love hearing that. I mean, I've been a Lions stan since beginning of last year when nobody was talking about the Lions. And, the Lions, everybody's like, the Lions are coming out of nowhere. And I was like, I've been saying the Lions are going to come out of nowhere. I want to see the Lions win the Super Bowl this year. That's what I want to see. And then that way I can stop rooting for the Lions and stop cheering for the Lions, and I can move on to my next victim. Right now, I agree with you. I think the Lions are the best. They're the most complete team in the NFL right now. Best offensive line. They have the 1-2 punch with Montgomery and Gibbs. Their wide receiver core is great. Jared Goff's playing good ball. And you don't throw 5 interceptions and come back for the 19-point victory without just having a complete team in general. And so I got to tip my hat to him, man, because the Texans aren't a slouch. And they lost this game, but the Texans are still a really great team. C.J. Stroud played great. They are missing quite a few pieces on this offense, and they still...
Wow. C.J. Stroud played great the first half. He looked like he's been struggling this season, and part of it's because he's been under a lot of pressure. He's been sacked a ton. They're missing weapons, obviously. But in the first half of this game, everyone was thinking, oh, shit, C.J. Stroud figured out how to play awesome football even with this situation. Unfortunately, it didn't carry over to the second half, but he gave us a glimpse for 2 quarters about, oh, yeah, I remember this guy now. This guy can win any single game he's playing. So C.J. Stroud also has some positives to take away from this game, where he demonstrated that against a Lions defense that's good. Brian Branch might be the best defensive back in football, and he's very annoying to me because there are at least 5 or 6 plays. I was a defensive back. I watch a lot of the defenses closely, and Brian Branch has 5 or 6 plays every game where he just acts like a total moron and completely blows his coverage. But for the rest of the game, he's the best cornerback in football. So this is a very good Lions defense. C.J. Stroud diced him up for 2 quarters. He looked awesome, and I think he's going into next week saying, okay, I got a little bit of the juice back. Maybe we can build some momentum even with the injuries on this team. I'm
calling it the sophomore slumps. Because that's what I'm going to title it, because CJ's still a great quarterback. He is missing a lot of pieces, but we got to see the CJ Stroud that we saw last year in glimpses and pieces, and we know that it's still alive in there. It's just figuring it out. And I think it's kind of a Caleb Williams-esque situation where he doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket because his offensive line is not great.
Well, and getting Nico Collins back is going to be huge. I mean, we could see this team completely flip around once they get a little bit healthier. Obviously, Diggs is gone, and that really sucks. But we're going to see a lot of this offense, even with the addition of Joe Mixon. When Nico Collins comes back, this is an offense that could be better than what we saw last year on paper. So once they get some time together and they're able to put those reps together with everybody being healthy, we might be, going back to being really impressed with the Texans.
Sure. All right, Scotty, let's move over to the kickoff karaoke. So for anybody, this is your first time joining us, welcome in. This is LeatherBrainz, and we are so excited to have you here. Kickoff karaoke is we are betting against the spread at 4 games each week. And we're keeping track, Scotty. You, me, and Alan. We're all keeping track of what our score is throughout the season. Whoever loses in kickoff karaoke for the season-long betting against the spread has to sing the national anthem live for all of the Brainiacs right before the Super Bowl. So the current standings are this. Scotty, you're in first place with 25 wins. Alan is in second place with 22, and I am slumming it down here at the bottom with 17 victories. The games we have picked this week are the Commanders, Eagles, Ravens, Steelers, Falcons, Broncos, and Chiefs, Bills. So we will start with the Commanders at the Eagles. The Eagles are 3-point favorites. Scotty, as the ringleader of this kickoff karaoke, I am going to let you go first. Who are you taking this week?
Well, first of all, props to Alan. He's the only one of us 3 that got all 4 games right last week. Me and you both missed one. So props to Alan. He's not here, but he's going with the Eagles. This is a tough game for me because I'm invested in Jaden Daniels. I really want the Commanders to be good, and obviously we've seen a lot of hope for that, but I think they've got a little bit of work to do, and the Eagles have figured it out. I mean, they look good at football all over again. Granted, they played the Cowboys, who might just be absolute ass this last week, but the Eagles over the last several weeks have looked really good. So when I'm torn between what I want to happen and what I think's going to happen, I'm going to go with the logic side rather than the emotional side. I think the Eagles are going to win this game.
I'm also going to take the Eagles, my friend. I think the Eagles are one of the most competitive teams right now, or definitely in the conversation as one of the more competitive teams in the NFL. I want Jaden Daniels to be great too. I think that the Commanders are in really great hands. I think they're in a great situation, but I think the Eagles right now are they're starting to fire on all cylinders. They got A.J. Brown back. Saquon Barkley's absolutely electric. I'm going to take the Eagles too, because I do believe that they are going to win this game by more than 3 points. And now we will go over to the Ravens at the Steelers. Ravens are 3-point favorites, which is kind of interesting to me, because I would almost move the spread more in favor of the Ravens. And that's who I'm taking this week. I'm going to take the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a really great team. I think the Ravens are Super Bowl contenders. We talked about them earlier. I see that they are going to – I mean, they're going to the playoffs instantly, and I think that they are probably – and we'll see how they do in the playoffs, but they're going to make a deep playoff push, if not go to the Super Bowl this year. And Allen took the Steelers, which I find to be interesting. Steelers have a great defense, but their offense, Mr. Unlimited is boom bust. I think they still have a lot to do on that offensive side of the ball. And Allen's taking the Steelers. So, Scotty, split the hairs here. Are you taking the Ravens or the Steelers?
Well, Allen took the Steelers last week too, and he was right. But I'm going to take the Ravens. Okay. The Ravens, like I said earlier, are kind of like a schizophrenic team, and it just depends on which version of are we going to get the absolutely dominant Ravens, or are we going to get the Ravens that find a way to lose? And I do think that the Ravens, if you just look at these teams on paper, the Ravens are far superior. But the Steelers, with their, obviously incredible coaching and their solid defense, and Russell Wilson's been playing pretty well, they can compete. If you look up the term frisky, we've talked a lot about frisky teams. If you look up the term frisky in the dictionary, you're going to see a picture of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, that's just who they are. They can win any game. I'm just going to go with who I think is the better team, which is the Baltimore Ravens.
I mean, I took the Ravens too, so I agree with you. Let's move over to the Falcons at Broncos. Broncos, surprisingly, in my opinion, are 1.5-point favorites. Allen's taking the Falcons. Scotty, Kyle Pitts no matter what, question mark?
Yep. Kyle Pitts no matter what. This is another one where I just think if the Falcons play if the Falcons play their best game, I think they can win this game by 2 touchdowns. The Broncos have been playing decent, but Bo Nix is still a rookie. Small sample size with him. I still think this offense doesn't have a ton of weapons. If the Falcons have a better offense on paper than the Broncos do defense, despite the fact that the Broncos defense is good. So I do think that the Falcons are going to win this game, but the Broncos, I started the season by saying they were ass. They're moving up in my internal rankings from ass to frisky. So I guess we'll see. If they win this game, I might have a totally different outlook on the Broncos depending on how it looks, but I'm still going Kyle Pitts no matter what. I think the Falcons are the better team.
I'm also taking the Falcons for everything that you just mentioned. I think that the Broncos, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if the Broncos won this game because they are entering frisky territory, but I think the Falcons are already in frisky territory, and I think the Falcons they should be going to the playoffs, maybe not making a deep push, but I expect that from the Falcons, and I said that at the beginning of this year, and I still believe that, and so I think that the Falcons will win this game. I think that the Broncos being favored by 1.5 points is, like I mentioned, a little surprising to me because I would have thought the Falcons would have been favored by 1.5 points, but I think the Falcons will win this game. So now what many have circled is perhaps the game of the year. Chiefs at Bills. Bills are 2.5-point favorites. Scotty, Allen's going against the grain here, as you and Allen are both resident Chiefs fans here, and Allen's taking the Bills to win this. Allen does not think the Chiefs are going to win this game, and now I have to ask you, with the Bills being 2.5-point favorites, who are you taking, my friend?
Well, if this was in the postseason, it's Chiefs 10 times out of 10. I'm going to go against my own grain because I've taken every team that I think is the better team. I think the Bills are the better team. I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have proven time and time again this season that they can find a way to win. The Bills have been playing great football. Josh Allen, save this last week, has also been playing great football. But I just think that the Chiefs have the coaching staff. They've got the players on the roster. They obviously can compete in any single game against any opponent. I think they can find a way to win this game. But every time we play the Bills, I just get terrified. Every time. It's very, very scary.
Well, I'm gonna take the Bills, man. I'm taking the Bills here. I think that the Bills are gonna hand the Chiefs their first loss this season. The Chiefs are due for one. And I think against Josh Allen and this Bills team, I think that the Chiefs will finally see God bleed, as Allen sometimes describes it. And honestly, I think it would probably be better off for the Chiefs if you did lose. I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you want to lose this game. And I'm going to tell you why. You don't want the egos to get too big in that building. You don't want everybody to think that you're unstoppable. And I think that the Chiefs have won a lot of really close games this year. And so to lose a game, I think almost would reinvigorate that team a little bit and be like, okay, like we have to do better, because if we don't, we're going to, potentially lose. You're going to the playoffs, but like maybe lose the first week bye, or et cetera, et cetera. I think this is a good week to lose, because the Bills are a really good team, and I think it also will get some buyback, or everybody will get reinvigorated to perform at the highest level if you lose to the Bills this week.
I see what you're saying. I think the fact, like the manner in which the Chiefs have won this entire season is enough to say we have no room for error. Like this is not a team. This is not 2018 Chiefs. Like, this is not a team that's like, we're going to win every single game no matter what. Like, we're just better than everybody. I don't think they think that. I don't think the fans think that. There's nobody that thinks the Chiefs are unstoppable, are unbeatable. So I tend to think that right now, the more wins we put under our belt, what we're talking about is making every single game matter. Because if this is a team that's not 9-0, if this is a team that's 7-2, or even further down the line, if this is a team that is a 10-win team or an 11-win team, but has a couple losses, you're kind of firmly in that place where, yes, you're fighting for playoff positioning, but you're comfortably going to make the playoffs. When you're a team with 0 losses, every single week is like, this is not going to be our first loss. This is not going to be our first loss. And I think maintaining that undefeated schedule is plenty to invigorate the players and get them excited about playing each and every week. Also, they're professionals. Like, they should be coming out, with their heads on fire every week, no matter what.
Well, but the Panthers are also listed as a professional sports team, and I don't think they have any of that mentality.
Yeah, but I do think that the undefeated schedule right now, I think, is plenty motivating for this squad. So I think if we lost this game, it's not the end of the world. We've won enough games that it's not going to make that big of a difference. But if we win this game, we're talking about, okay, like, is this another team that can go undefeated next to that Dolphins, the only other team in NFL history that's done it?
Hear me out. Start all your second string players this week against the Bills. You just do it.
You want to see a Carson Wentz game?
Give everybody the week off. Say, hey, we're willing to chalk up this L. We won't risk injury on any of our starters. Give you an extra week of recovery. Just let all the second stringers come out. Just hand the Bills the victory, because it doesn't necessarily matter. And everybody will come refreshed, reinvigorated. You won't even be close to losing to the Broncos again. And life is good.
Wow. I don't know if we have a second string. We've had so many injuries that we might not have enough players to have a second string team, because that's one thing that people aren't talking about, because the Chiefs are winning. The fact that they're winning these games with, like, their wide receiver, well, now they have Hopkins, so I don't know I don't know where you rank him, but we lost at the beginning of the season, the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2. We lost our wide receiver 5. We lost our running back 1. Like, we lost key pieces on defense. The injuries have plagued this team, but nobody talks about it, because they're winning games still. And again, it's just another thing that we need to be praising Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo for. These guys are masterminds at finding ways to win games, even when we're playing with a dilapidated roster right now. Like, this is not the best version of the Chiefs, even close, and they're still finding a way to win games. Like, it's crazy.
That's pretty crazy. All right, that's it. That's all the time we have today, Scotty. Before we jump off the mic here, I do want to let everybody know you should 100% go check out LeatherBrainz with a Z.com for free daily content. Free daily NFL content. We have a great group of writers over there producing a variety of content, whether it's Broncos articles, betting advice, or satirical pieces that are quite humorous. Go check out LeatherBrainz.com. It is 100% free. There's articles over there. It's a good old time. I highly recommend you checking that out. I could not say anything greater about those group of dudes over there.
I do have one thing to add before we get out of here.
Yeah.
You and Alan talked last week. There were some talking points in the notes about the Chargers being overrated. And
yes.
Alan went on this whole tirade about how it's hard to win in the NFL and they need to get credit and they're properly rated. This week, the Chargers beat the Titans. The Chargers beat another 2-win team. They have beaten one team with more than 2 wins. Guess who it was? The Broncos. This team is overrated, 100%. The Chargers, people are talking about them even in the same league as the Broncos. I know they beat the Broncos, but when you look at the Broncos, you're excited about the future. When you look at the Chargers, this is a team that has not proven anything. They might be getting way better. They have not proven fucking anything at all. And I know Alan said they're properly rated. Nobody's real afraid of the Chargers. And I've said before, maybe it's just because they're in my division. I interact with those fans more often on X and all that. But Chargers fans are fucking delusional right now. Like, they are so excited about their team. And I'm like, you guys haven't done fucking shit. You haven't played anybody. They got a lot of work to do. I just needed to throw that in there because I was yelling at my radio or my car speakers or whatever when I was listening to last week's episode at Alan. I'm like, no, this is the AFC West. We're rivals. Talk shit. It's time to talk shit.
I just don't think there's a need to, because I think anybody who follows the NFL and realizes what's going on knows that the Chargers are, I think they're properly rated to everybody, perhaps but the Chargers fans, because nobody's like...
I disagree. I think generally speaking, NFL fans are like, wow, Harbaugh really turned this team around.
No, I think Harbaugh got the run game figured out, and that's about it.
Even that. The run game against who? The run game against who?
Yeah. All right. Well, they can't control their schedule.
I agree. I mean, they're doing what they have to do, but I'm not saying that, they suck. I'm saying that we don't know if they suck because they haven't played anybody. They have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Like, it's not even close.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not arguing that. This came out of nowhere.
It's been bottled up for a week.
I'm glad we gave you the outlet to get it out. But also say, I don't have any passion behind the Chargers because I don't care about the Chargers, and I don't think they're an elite team. So I'm going to let bygones be bygones on this one. I'm glad you got your tirade out, but I have nothing else to say on the Chargers. And I have nothing else to say at all, actually. That's the end of the show. So appreciate all you guys and gals tuning in to episode 200 once again. I genuinely appreciate everybody's support throughout this entire journey, and we're excited for the next 200. This is we love doing this and love the community that we have built. So thank you to all of you who have tuned in and week out, interact with us over on our social medias, and check out our website, because y'all are why we do this, is because we do genuinely love all of you and appreciate interacting with you guys. So thank you so much. Go check out LeatherBrainz.com. I love you all. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.